This was kind of a turning point for me when I realized that there were really wise, smart property managers out there that knew a whole lot more than I did about the area, about the rents, what we should be charging.
Welcome to the Going Long Podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I am really looking forward to today's conversation, letting you get in, learn a lot about what's going on in this long distance investing space. And you know what? Also want to share with you, as you know, you are part of a community that continues to grow, that continues to move higher and higher up the charts in terms of the value that we're adding. And thanks to you and the honest ratings and reviews that you're leaving, we continue to bring our community closer and closer to the top of the chart, so to speak. So if you haven't had an opportunity yet to leave us an honest rating and review, go ahead and do that, especially if you found at least one bit of value from any of the over 150 some odd conversations that we've had so far. We've also made it very easy for you. If you don't know how to do that, there's a link here in the show notes. So just go ahead and leave us your honest rating and review. Continue to give us feedback so we can continue to bring you the best guest and the most value for every single conversation. That being said, I know that there are a lot of you that want to also find conversations from the past. Listen, we've also made that super easy for you as well. You can find every single conversation, whether you want to watch it on the video version or listen to it. You can go to billykeels.com. Once again, that's billykeels.com/podcasts. And that way you can find every single episode that we've ever had. Once again, it's billykeels.com/podcast to find every single one of the previous episodes. And as you know, repetition is something that is absolutely fantastic for your learning. And then lastly, I know a number of you are interested in learning more about some of the different opportunities that we have or being part of a community, a club. We do have an accredited investors club that we are forming. So if you're interested in understanding more about that, feel free to send an email to aiclub@billykeels.com. Once again, that's aiclub@billykeels.com. Once again, accredited investors, if you are someone who has a net worth of $1 million or more, not including your first home, if you've made $200,000 a year the previous 2 years and expected to do that now, or as a family, 300 in the previous 2 years and expected to do that now. And as I mentioned before, there's also a test that you can take, but you can find out more about that as well. But if you're interested in learning more, go ahead and send us an email to aiclub@billykeels.com. Now, as for today's conversation, you're going to get loads out of this conversation, especially for those of you, those high-paid professionals that are so busy that sometimes you forget about your own personal finance. Like you do much better managing your corporate budgets than you do your own home budgets or your home finances. Today's guest is been seen on over 2,000 interviews or so, and has her own podcast and is really focused on giving you a lot of not just strategic ideas, but also she gives you some very practical, tactical things that you can do in your home to get more control over your personal finances. And when you're able to do that, it's going to allow you to live with a lot less stress. It's going to provide you with many more choices and options for the things that you want to be able to do in your life and as you move forward in your investing journey. So I got a lot out of today's conversation. I'm sure that you're going to love it. And just after these words, we're going to go ahead and get in our conversation with Laura D. Adams. Whether you're an active investor or a passive investor, you really like your day job and you want to continue to go into your day job every single day feeling better, knowing that you've created the right options for yourself. At the same time, you just don't have enough time to really get your head around, spend all the hours investing long distance. Well, one way or the other, over the last number of years that I have been investing long distance, I've really understood a number of the major mistakes that you should avoid if you want to get to creating the right options for yourself much faster and being able to create more income sooner. And if you want to do that, if you want to understand more about that, I've made it really, really simple. You can just go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. You can learn all the things that the 7 major mistakes that I've seen over and over again that I want you to avoid. Once again, you can go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. So if you want to understand how getting a hold of your personal finances can help you to create more options for your life, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. And I promise you that because you know what? Today's guest not only started her professional career as a senior insurance analyst, I'm sure she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. Since then has gone on to take a number of different experiences and most importantly is written a number of books, one of which is the Money Smart Solopreneur and also the Money Girl's Smart Moves to Grow Rich. And you know what? She's also financial spokesperson and host of the very, very popular podcast, Money Girl Podcast. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Laura Adams. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hey, Billy. It's great to be with you.
I am so excited to be here and in exchange and also have the Going Long family learn so much about you. And so I know in our pre-conversation, I was kind of letting you know, hey, listen, you know what? We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But you know, and the Going Long family already knows this, but I'll just repeat it anyway. You're going to get 2 questions in the beginning. You're going to get 3 at the very end. And in the middle, well, you and I are just going to talk and people are going to get a chance to know a lot more about you and learn from all of the experiences that you've had. So if you're ready, I'd like to go ahead and ask you the first question.
I am ready.
I knew you would be. So listen, help us understand, Laura, where do you live in the United States?
Yeah, I'm right now in Vero Beach, Florida. So that's on the Atlantic side, about an hour north of Palm Beach. I've been here a few years and I've lived all over the U.S. I kind of started in Florida and went to California and Texas and have made my way back to Florida on the beach. So it's been a great transition, little sleepy town, but lots to do, beautiful beaches. So I'm really enjoying it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I like beautiful beaches as well too, being here in Barcelona, and I've kind of lived all over the place from Ohio. And yeah, so that I can relate a lot to that. And I'm sure that a lot of the Going Long family can as well. So the second question is, one of the things I love to do is be able to get the show started off with some more positivity. So can you help share with us, what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
You know, I would have to say it's watching the sunrise from my place on the beach. You know, for some reason, seeing the sunrise every morning, it just kind of reminds me that time passes quickly and, you know, we need to make the most of it. And it's just a great way to start the day. So I would have to say the sunrise.
Watching the sunrise is always fantastic. So it's a great way to get the day started. Great energy, great vibes. So thank you for sharing that with us, Laura. Really appreciate it. And now let's get into understanding more about you. And I always try, I like give myself 8 to 10 seconds, something like that, just to give highlights about you. But it's impossible to tell your story in 8 to 10 seconds. It's just not possible. So I would love for you to share with me and the entire Going Long family, if you could give us more about your own backstory in your own words. And also if you can highlight some of the most important decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then from there, you and I can kind of take the conversation and see where it goes.
Right. So I would have to say, you know, coming from the South, going to kind of, you know, traditional schools and getting out into the work world, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I mean, there's no way that I would have believed that I would have ended up in personal finance if you had asked me, you know, when I was in high school or college, but got out in the working world, did a lot of work in finance and decided that I wanted to take that formal education a little further. And so after owning my own business, you know, working for other people, I decided to go back and get an MBA. That decision was really pivotal for me. And in that program, I met a lot of very successful people, both successfully in their careers and educationally. Many of them had multiple master's degrees, but they were really struggling with their personal finances. And it was kind of a light bulb moment for me where I said, you know, you can be smart, you can be successful. That doesn't mean that you know what to do with money and that you manage your finances wisely. A lot of them were struggling with debt, you know, not only student loans for their education, but, you know, really just not very organized and thinking about the future. They weren't investing for retirement. They weren't investing, period. So that really sparked an interest in personal finances for me. And I began blogging, which turned into a podcast. And so that was in 2007. And then the podcast really took off in 2008. And it's just been a passion for me. I've been podcasting weekly ever since 2008. And the audience, as you know, the audience makes the difference for you. When you get questions and feedback from them, that's really been what has kind of kept me going. And so not only do we cover personal things on the Money Girl Show, but we try to cover trending topics. I try to really address what people are asking me. So that has been just a fantastic platform that kind of led to writing books and then eventually doing media for those books, which led into doing media professionally.
Well, and that's one of the things we haven't even really explored is all the different ways that you are making impact in the media outlets that you talked about before. But one of the things that you just said that I'm really curious about, because you were surrounded by people that were highly educated, that were quote unquote successful, that had not just one MBA, but maybe multiple master's degrees. And you saw that they were struggling from a personal finance perspective. Now, what was it so you recognized that, but what was it within you that made you say, well, you know what, I see that these friends of mine or colleagues are struggling, but now you know what, I actually want to go further into that, understand why they're doing that, and also be able to work towards helping to shed some light on that to help them with their situation?
It came from the questions that they would ask me. They knew that I had been a business owner. I think when we had a class, we had one class on personal finances in the entire MBA program. And they kind of saw me like loving it, and really getting into it. And they were like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to list out all my assets and really face my finances. When they were seeing me loving that and kind of leaning into that, they started asking me a lot of questions like, gosh, how did you learn all this? And the reality is I had been studying personal finances ever since I was a kid, just reading books, just, wanting to learn and looking for different people who were experts to learn from. I was begging my parents for a checking account, when I was like 14. I was just one of those kids that just wanted to have my own money and manage it myself. And so I always enjoyed that. And then I realized, other people are not like me. They don't really necessarily like to manage money or feel confident about it. So that was what kind of made me realize, okay, I have maybe a talent or an affinity for something that not everybody enjoys, but they may still need help with that. I mean, you can't go through life without having some mastery of money and finances and be successful. You can earn a lot of money, but you can watch it, be frittered away, if you're not managing it properly.
Yeah, the proper management of your capital, right? Your currency, whatever you want, is one of the things that for many people takes them, their entire life to really understand it in the money game and how things work. So to be able to have that kind of already desire at such a young age, I think is fantastic. And then see that develop. And then your natural curiosity also then leads to you being someone that others seek out. Now, you mentioned also too that you wanted your checking account and you were 14 years old and stuff like that. But so was this something that you actually saw from your family? Was this something that you were just literally like you were the only one in the family, or was that maybe part of a family culture, just this understanding of money and finances and how it worked?
That's a great question, Billy. I don't think that I really absorbed it from family. My family they have all been very entrepreneurial. I will say that. They've been in real estate and business, but I did not have mom and dad sit down and say, all right, we're going to talk about personal finances and this is what you need to do. They were really very hands off. So I think it was just my innate interest in the topic.
So that's really, well stated. So that, your interest and then being able to move and the curiosity, and there were no barriers, it sounds like, to keep you from doing that. Because sometimes if you have a different thought from other people, I'm sure you and I both know lots of people that they had this contrarian type of view and no one around them wanted to hear that. So they kind of didn't know where else to go and kind of stopped. So I'm glad that was not your case. But you also mentioned one thing that just kind of also got my ears kind of perking up, and a lot of the Going Long family as well. You talked about entrepreneurial family and having exposure to real estate. And so I always look at real estate as one of the ways to kind of help people to begin to understand how money, currency begin to work. I used to think it was real estate just for real estate's sake. But then when I started realizing and understanding that there's a whole thing that happens with debt and depreciation and cash flow and being able to have more control. And so that's one of the things that a lot of us want to understand and tap into. And so I know that you also have experience having lived in one location and investing long distance in another location. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that experience and kind of also, a lot of people don't believe that most people, like if you just go conventional wisdom says you buy where you live. And so you've had this experience of living in one place and maybe investing in another, either actively or passively. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that experience and also what allowed you to say, okay, well, this can make sense for this portion of my portfolio.
Yes, I do really think that that is a barrier for many people. They do think, well, I live in a city where maybe the values are too high or the property types are not what I would want to invest in, and they kind of sort of give up. I guess I had the good fortune of having family in different areas in the Southeast who would say, this is a great city to invest in rental property. We see some great 3-4 bedroom homes that are reasonably priced. This would be a great opportunity. And so for some of the deals, I did partner with family, and some I went in on my own with my husband or with other business partners and really just leaned on property managers. This was kind of a turning point for me when I realized that there were really wise, smart property managers out there that knew a whole lot more than I did about the area, about the rents, what we should be charging. And I remember a property that I had when I had a tenant for a while, and when I decided, okay, I'm tired of managing this property because I've moved to a different state. I've moved on. And I got this fantastic property manager who instantly raised the rent and paid for themselves within just a few months of that rent adjustment, going from where I thought it should be to where it really should be. I did not know the market as well as I thought I knew the market. The professional knew the market. So that was a turning point for me to simply trust other people to do the management.
And so being able to have that trust is something that's fantastic. And I just want to reiterate once again for the Going Long family, because this is a lot about understanding certain principles and recognizing certain patterns, right? And once again, Laura's helping you to understand that she didn't say that she wanted to go and just do it by herself, but just one thing was having family, having friends in another location that were also, they wanted to talk to you about specific opportunities that they saw in the Southeast of the United States. And you were open to listening to that. And then from there, you also recognize the strength of one of the things I like to say is like hashtag teamwork makes the dream work, because at the end of the day, you can't do everything because you only have 24 hours in a day. So when you are very crystal clear, and I always talk about having your personal philosophy, and then once you know what that philosophy is, what you're looking for, are there tax benefits? Are there cash flow? Then you go to a specific location where you're going to get the highest probability of being able to find that. And then after that, and I think it's the most important thing, and I love that you just said it, is the team. And being able to build the team, and whether that is your property manager or that is your specific lawyer or that is your broker, or whoever that is, it's really important to get the right team. And the property managers are usually the ones that help to either help to make get closer to your goal, or the ones that really take you further away from the goal. And then afterwards, it doesn't really matter what the specific opportunity is, as long as the other three things are kind of aligned with one another. So appreciate you sharing that. Wow, don't you just love this conversation? This is amazing. This is fantastic. And so just really quickly, I just wanted to remind you, for those of you that are looking to create more options for yourself, get there faster, and do that with long distance investing, make sure that you go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid, so that you can avoid all those mistakes, get to your goals faster and sooner. Once again, that's billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. Now back to the conversation. So we kind of talked about the long distance thing, but I do want to come back to, I know what you're really, really known for and where you're really making the biggest impact in helping people today. And that is the whole concept of personal finance. And because this is something that you've been talking about and helping people with since you were, in university and beyond, I think a lot of times personal finance can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But would you help the Going Long family understand, what does the concept of personal finance mean for you and the way that you're helping people today?
For me, it really does come down to less stress and freedom and choices. So, whatever you want to accomplish with your money, whether it's sending kids to school or, being able to live in a great location, relocate, whether it's really setting yourself up for a healthy retirement, whatever it is, buying properties, that goal is only going to be achieved through your finances, right? I mean, our financial resources are limited for all of us, no matter how much you have or don't have, your resources are limited. So making sure you're allocating them in the way you want to see results is key. And the only way you do that is by understanding what is my income, what are my expenses, and how can I adjust that? Can I earn more in order to have more money to invest? Or can I cut expenses in order to have more to invest? It really comes down to you can't change what you don't monitor. You cannot manage what you don't monitor. So that's really the core of finance. But I say that hesitantly because a lot of people say, oh my gosh, budgets, don't talk to me about budgets. I'm not interested. But the reality is, if you can set up your priorities first, whatever that is, you really don't need a budget. If you can make sure you're setting aside, 10% for retirement and maybe another 10% for your investments and maybe a little bit here and there for your emergency fund. Once you get all those pieces in place and you are going toward your goals, really what you do with the rest of your money is totally up to you. I don't like people to feel like, oh my gosh, personal finance is so tough because I don't want to track every penny of my spending. The reality is it's not, that is really not the goal. The goal is to fund your priorities first. Then once you have those locked in, you're kind of free to do whatever you want with your money, go on vacations, whatever, buy clothes, whatever is your thing. But if you're not locking in those priorities first, you're not going to achieve your goals. It's just, that's the bottom line.
I love that you talk about that. So funding your priorities first, and really from there, it's not finding every single cent that you have to do things. I mean, I've got a practical example that's one of these things that's happening now, right? I have a cousin that actually had, as a priority, comes to visit us on a yearly basis, right? The pandemic kind of threw things out of whack, but being able to know, okay, listen, this is a priority for me, is being able to travel to Europe. And so as long as you're funding, allowing yourself to fund to be able to go visit family and friends, and hey, guess what? You're probably not going to worry about the last 3 cents that was somewhere else. And so that I love that you talk about that funding priorities, and also starting out with not just how do you cut expenses, it's how can you also earn more money. And so speaking of which, so we have a lot of people that are here, that are watching, that are listening to us, that are part of the Going Long family, that are, they're high paid professionals that are working in IT space or medical sales devices or pharmaceutical and things like that, consultants. So it just happens to be the people that are listening to us. And I also have seen, I'm not a personal finance person. I haven't focused on that. I just, I focus on tangible assets primarily. But can you talk to it? Because sometimes it can be a little bit, I don't know, maybe some people would say it's embarrassing to say, hey, look, I'm out there and I'm making $300,000-$400,000 and I still am having problems making my checkbook end at the end of the day. You gave us a really good idea in terms of prioritization, but maybe some people are still struggling today, Laura, and they don't really know even where to start. So what would you just say to that person that is the high wage earner and for whatever reason, they still can't even get to their priorities? Where should they start?
It's not an uncommon problem that high paid folks are not reaching goals. And it comes down to, for a lot of people, they feel like they should be living the lifestyle of this high paid professional. So, I need the home that makes it look like I'm a doctor or a lawyer or, whatever professional I am. I need the clothes that match that. And for a lot of people, just taking a step back and having the courage to maybe downscale in some cases is what they need to do. I mean, they really need to think about, is it wise for me to spend every penny that I make without thinking about the future? And that's really what people are doing. They're sacrificing their future for the things that they're spending on today. Now, I'm not one to say that you should never buy luxuries or take vacations. I believe we all need to reward ourselves with, that motivates us to keep going and to do our best. But when you are not funding your priorities first, you're going to end up in a bad situation where you're going to look back and say, gosh, I wish 20 years ago, I had been investing. I wish that I had been setting that money aside for whatever it may be, those retirement funds or real estate or kids' education, whatever that may be for you. So it's not an uncommon problem. So the first step is really taking a hard look at what is my income? What are my expenses? And if you're not, I would say if you're not setting aside at least 10 to 15% for your priorities, that's what you've got to make, that's what you've got to do first. You've got to say, how can I carve out at least 10% of my gross income for my goals? That's just a great place to start. If you don't have an emergency fund, just to fund all those things that come up at the last minute, that's also something that you need to do. But in a lot of cases, folks who've got higher income probably have some savings to fall back on, but they just may not be investing, enough for their future. So thinking about what is that goal? And I would say at least 10%. That's maybe the first step. Then go up each year. How can I increase that? Maybe next year it's 11%, 12, getting up to 15%, maybe even 20%, if you're really ambitious would be fantastic. And so, if you're not setting aside money today, I think you need to just remember that the future you is not going to be very happy with you today if you're not making at least a few sacrifices. In a lot of cases, if you can automate that savings process, you can make it seamless and it will eventually feel normal and natural. Yes, at first you may feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to cut back a little bit here or there. But if you can automate it, what I find that can be the trick for a lot of people because it will be happening in the background without them having to really make hard decisions or having to think about it too much.
And so by being able to automate as much of that as possible, so I really appreciate the way that you just broke that down for the entire Go Along family, Laura, because it is one of those things where you have to say, okay, well, what are the priorities? You must take time to define what your priorities are. And just as an example, Laura's helping you to understand, hey, listen, today, if you're out there and you're making, $300,000 a year, your gross. So as an example, say, hey, look, what can I do to make sure that I'm saving $30,000 a year? As an example. And then over the next 5 years, I move from $30,000 to $45,000. And I know that on an annual basis, when I'm doing that, because those are pre-tax dollars, that I'm helping to reward my future self, right? And if you're not able to do that, at least you're measuring it and you're understanding, well, why did you not save this amount of money this year and be able to focus on yourself? And then also, and one of the things I love that you just said as well, Laura, is how can you use technology as well to make sure that you are automating as much of paying yourself first as possible so that you can thank yourself in the future. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I didn't know was there anything else that you wanted to add on to that, Laura?
One other thing that I would say is a lot of people who are making high incomes are still feeling very anxious about their finances. This is another thing I find. And the reason is because they may not have a plan in place. Yep. Once you put a plan in place, it's like a mind shift where you say, wow, I see the road. I see that path to success and to security. And all of a sudden, it's like a burden is taken off your shoulders and you can feel a lot more secure knowing that all of this automation, just this whatever you set up, whether it's to a retirement account or putting into regular savings, that's happening for you. And I've seen so many people say, oh my gosh, I just feel less stress. I feel more at peace about my whole financial situation simply because I put a plan in place that took me maybe 30 minutes to develop.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this huge master plan where you lock yourself in a room for 8 weeks and then come out and going, ooh. But when you have a plan, it does help you it provides you with clarity. And one of the things I've said, I don't know if it's thousands of times, but as soon as you have clarity, it allows you amazing power to actually decide what you want to do and then act upon that. And so, but everything starts with having that plan, which I think is fantastic. Now, one of the other things, and so, for your focus on personal finance, I know one of the things that so many people struggle with is this 4-letter word, right? It is this terrible 4-letter word that most people don't say and most people would never say on a show like this. But you know what? Since I guess it's my show, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's this terrible 4-letter word, which is DEBT, debt. And so a lot of people love debt. A lot of people hate debt. Can you talk to us about like, what is debt and why would you love it and why would you hate it?
This is such a great question because you're right. It's very polarizing. And from my perspective, there is a middle ground where you want to use debt to your advantage. If you can use debt to your advantage, it's good debt, it's wise. But if debt is working against you, if it's costing you to pay super high rates of interest, for example, you're racking up credit cards or you're taking out loans at very high interest rates, on things that are not appreciating, you are in bad debt territory. Good debt territory increases your net worth. So debt that allows you to either increase your income, increase future net worth, that can be good debt. Now, there are limits to everything, of course. I would never encourage somebody to take out, let's say, more student debt than they could ever repay. But student debt can be a good debt because it can help you earn a degree that will help you get paid more money. Taking out a loan for a home can be an extremely good debt because it is low interest rate, it comes with tax advantages, and it can help you own an asset that will likely appreciate in value. Other investments as well, so we do want to think about what is that debt for? What am I buying with the debt? That's the kicker. If you're buying vacations, if you're buying clothes, you're buying things that are not appreciating, that's a bad debt that you want to minimize.
Yeah, and thank you very much for talking about that, because it's one of those things where it's not good or bad. It's depending on, it's a tool. Debt is a tool. And so how are you using it? To your point, are you using debt to pay for something that you probably are just consuming and getting pleasure from? I don't know. Are you using it to pay a smaller portion to gain control of a much larger asset that's kicking off cash flow and providing you with other benefits? Oh, I don't know. Depends on the individual. So, but it is that 4-letter word that everybody talks about. And so, I figure we might as well talk about it here because it just helps to give people a perspective. It helps the Going Long family have that perspective. One other thing I do want to come back to that you mentioned earlier, because a lot of times people figure, how do I just not spend money on this? How do I spend less on groceries? How do I take less trips? But you talked about one of the things, which was creating multiple streams of income. So a lot of people are, high wage earners, and you're going into your job every day and you're making a lot of money and you're paying a lot in tax because that's what people that make a lot of money but don't own their own businesses typically do. And so usually working a lot of really, really crazy hours, long hours, and have a desire to be able to create other streams of income. But usually for the amount of time you're going to put in may be much smaller. So maybe you could talk to that person that hears what you're saying today, Laura, and they're like, I really want to be able to create multiple streams of income, but I make so much money from my job and I'm spending so many different hours. What are some of the things that I could be doing that are probably super obvious that I'm just not even thinking about today because I'm so busy in my day job?
Right. Yeah. I'm a big believer in diversifying your income sources and streams. You do want, and again, we talked about like security, peace of mind. This is another thing that can really help people feel financially secure and stable. So let's say you are one of those W-2 workers and you've got a pretty stressful day job. Thinking about what are your skills and abilities, and where there is a market for that outside of your day job, where those things intersect, and something you enjoy, if that's the case as well, that's a great place to look. So whether that's, teaching guitar lessons on the weekends, whether it's writing, maybe you're an expert in a particular area, writing. It could be, thinking about ways to create a service. It could be a product. Maybe you're somebody that really enjoys tinkering with things, on the weekend. Could you turn a hobby into a business? Could you turn a skill into a business? For most people, I would say yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be full-time. Since the pandemic, I've seen just a massive trend of folks wanting to start doing something on the side. They realize they need more security. So whether it's driving an Uber, delivering, kind of testing the waters a little bit with an idea about how to earn more income is great. Now, let's say maybe you are thinking about, going into something a little bit more professional. Like maybe you want to get a real estate license. Maybe you're thinking about selling on the side. A great way to dip your toe into that water would be find a mentor. Look for somebody in that field that you could work with, maybe just on a trial basis to find out, one, do I enjoy this work? Do I have time for it? Is there a market for it? Getting help from other people is usually a lot easier than you think. It may seem intimidating to ask somebody for help or guidance, but in a lot of cases, you could create a win-win relationship where you learn, you help them, and then all of a sudden, you've got a new skill or ability to earn some income on the side. So I would say doing your research is the first thing, maybe brainstorming. What are all the ways that I really could earn some money on the side? For a lot of people, it grows, it builds, and then all of a sudden, maybe they want to take the leap to do it full time. For other people, I know they love having both the kind of security of the day job and the side gig, whether it's investing in properties, again, tutoring. There's so many opportunities out there.
Yeah, and once again, Laura, I love the way that you give multiple options, multiple examples, because it can be everything from, well, sometimes it's just about allowing your brain to realize that there are other options. It's not just 88 hours in your day job, because if you have a passion for something and you enjoy it, is there a way for you to go out and teach someone to do that? Is there a way for you to be able to also be passionate about what you're doing and you're also being remunerated for that? And sometimes, it's just a matter of saying, okay, well, look, there's someone that's doing something that I want to be able to do. How can I help that person through a mentoring or mentee relationship? And that, once again, is also helping your mind think about what are the different things that you could do just beyond what you're doing in your day job, which ultimately could lead to other streams of income down the road. So thanks for making it very practical and giving us a number of examples there. I guess before we get into the going long final three, I know you also have a passion for book writing. It's something that I talked about at the very beginning. Maybe you could talk about a little bit about these, and I'll call them passion projects, that are actually going out positively impacting other people. Because a lot of people also have books in their mind and they're like, I don't really know what to write about. Well, you've done this multiple times over. So maybe tell us a little bit about your book writing.
Yeah, if book writing is a passion for you, I would say, just get started. You really just need to create an outline. If it's, particularly for a nonfiction, thinking about what is the structure of that book? What would you want to teach other people? And it really can be done a little bit each day. My first book I wrote over a year, and I would just get up early in the morning and write, for a couple hours, 5 days a week. And by the end of the year, the book was done, and so it does come down to discipline. But yeah, book writing is a fantastic way to get your experience out there. And even if it's not a New York Times best-selling book, it can be something that gives you more authority and credibility. It can build your business as well when you've got like a lot of your thoughts and ideas, and it shows that you are a thought leader when you can put all of that together in a book. So I would encourage folks just to get started. Publishing on your own has never been easier. It is just super easy to, upload your title to Amazon and create your own audiobook. I mean, literally, it's kind of a DIY world now. So I would really highly encourage folks to think about, what is the message that I would want to send the world? How can I make that in a concise format that could help people? And getting a great title, of course, is important, and the design. There are people out there that can help you with that. And it's super exciting to launch a book into the world.
All right. Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate that, and going through the process and having a plan. And once again, it comes back to being able to have discipline. And once you go through that, then you're able to share your story in the way that makes the most sense for you, to be able to also build that authority, and most importantly, really share your message with others. And when you share your message, you give yourself the opportunity to bring people towards you. And then that also helps you to make a positive impact on others. So appreciate you sharing that. And you know what, the thing is, Laura, we have to get into going long final three. The thing is, I never ask anybody the going long final three without making sure that you're ready. So my question to you is, are you ready?
I am ready.
I knew you would be ready. That doesn't shock me at all. All right. So we started with you over in Florida, getting started on that side of the pond. And now I always like to bring things back to this side of the pond because, as you know, I'm over here in Barcelona, Spain. So I would love for you to share with the Going Long family. What do you, or I guess, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
I have visited a lot of fantastic European cities. One of the most recent that I really enjoyed was Strasbourg, France. I had just a fantastic day there. I just remember the beauty of the city. The weather was perfect. You know, it was just a fantastic day. And so that city really comes to mind as just being kind of breathtaking. And the food, of course, was amazing.
Yeah, Strasbourg. Yeah, very, very cool. And I started my 1-year sabbatical 20 years ago in France. I was started in Paris, but lived there for a while in a wonderful place. And so Strasbourg, yes. So we will make sure that we include that in the show notes. And then the second question of the Going Long Final Three really has to do with understanding and having seen and being influenced by really successful people. And one of the things that I've always noticed about really successful people, and you're a very successful person, is that typically really successful people are that way because they don't make any mistakes and they've done things perfectly into the way that I think I got nervous. I do that all the time. It's by design. Don't worry. So all jokes aside, the thing is, I've been very fortunate to see a number of very successful people. And the thing about successful people that I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to is they typically make a lot more mistakes than most people, a whole lot more. The thing is that they do something very, very differently that most people do. And what they do differently is that they actually take a moment, they learn a lesson, and then they apply that lesson that they've learned. So I would love for you to share with the entire Going Long family just one lesson that you have learned as a result of a mistake or learning opportunity or however you want to call it that you know is going to impact the Going Long family today.
Yeah, such a great question. You know, I would say in terms of a big mistake that I made kind of early on was getting swept up in an investment that a friend of a friend of a friend said was just going to be this fantastic thing. And I didn't know anything about it, didn't really understand who the person was that was investing, and invested money in something that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme and lost a good bit of money. And this was early in my 20s. It was money that I could afford to lose, so it was okay. But it made a very powerful lesson and impact on me that you do not invest in things that you don't understand. You don't invest with people who you don't know. And you don't take a rumor for granted as being a great investment. So that was a really amazing, painful, but amazing lesson that I learned super early in my career.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And yeah, definitely make sure that you are investing in things that you understand, you get the question answered or the questions answered in the way that makes sense to you. And one of the things that I like to share, if you allow me to build on that, is make sure that the most important metric that no one ever talks about is positive. And that's the ROS. Make sure that the ROS is positive on the decisions that you make. And the ROS is the return on sleep. If you don't understand something, it's probably very unlikely that you are going to sleep well. And there is no percentage return that is worth waking up someday and not having any of it. So thank you for sharing that story with us and that piece of advice. So lastly is really just feeding our brains. And so we know that you've written multiple books and you're making lots and lots of impact, but would love for you to also share what is the one other book that you would recommend that's made a great impact on you?
Yeah, I'd say recently, The Practice by Seth Godin has made an impact on me. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm working on it now. And, you know, I just find everything that Godin does very insightful and ways, giving you new ways to think about marketing, new ways to think about how to make an impact. And I just find that super motivational. So I'd say any of Seth Godin's books, but the most recent is called The Practice.
The Practice. All right. Fantastic. We'll also make sure that is in the show notes. Wow. These conversations go by like lightning fast. They're just like so fast. I want to keep talking to you and asking you more questions, especially because we're talking about things that are, well, not most of everybody that's listening and watching us enjoys, which is personal finance concept. And I think about when you talked to us from the very beginning and seeing a number of other MBA students that were around you, and then they were kind of struggling. And then even when you got started early on, when you're asking to open your checking account at 14 years old, and just having this natural curiosity and really wanting to understand more about how you can create multiple streams of income, being able to take that income and pay yourself first. And then from there, realizing like, what are your priorities, defining your priorities, helping other people to define their priorities so that they can ultimately have more freedom, more options, more choices are the things that you talked about. And when you're able to do that and you're taking them in very practical applications, understanding whether you are investing in some type of real asset, whether you are looking at investing in other things that are not real assets, but ultimately so that you can get to the lifestyle that you want to be able to do sooner, faster. You've even taken the time to put that in the written word and share that across multiple different types of books. And you're consistently helping people on a weekly basis with your podcast. And I know that there are so many people, Laura, that are like, oh my gosh, I want to understand more about how I can get in touch with Laura. How can I find out more about what she's doing? Things like that. So could you do us a favor? Could you share with the entire Going Long family, what is the best way to contact you, your team, and understand more about what it is that you're doing?
Thank you for that opportunity, Billy. I would say coming to the Money Girl podcast and subscribing would be a great place to start. In that show, I always give a lot of information about where to reach me, but also my website, lauradadams.com, has a lot more information about me, my books, courses, and what I'm up to these days.
All right. Fantastic. lauradadams.com. Everybody go check it out. And also check out the Money Girl podcast. And listen, Laura, really, really appreciate you taking the time to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family. And really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I love what you're doing. So I hope you'll keep up the fantastic work. I really appreciate you including me on the show.
All right. Fantastic. It's my pleasure. And also to the entire Going Long family, I really look forward to welcoming you back on the very next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.